Well, everything's always cleaner in the spring.
I didn't know that was before that fire thing. I didn't know there was a gas station there.
Really? You never looked?
Never looked. They were building that pole thing. I looked over there a few times over that. But was it actually a functional one? Was it a functional? Like it, you could.
I don't know. I've never stopped him. I had the balls to stop him. Rather go to police.
Being recorded.
Beck's are offering $100 an acre of dry land at home.
Good morning. We'll call this meeting to order. Council is conducting this meeting in person and via conference call in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 199. Council meetings can take place in person as long as physical distancing of 2 meters can be maintained between participants. At this time, according to Alberta Health, public attendance at council meetings should be facilitated through virtual means. If you've submitted a comment request, the chair will call on you at the appropriate time. The chair may also ask for comment, and at this time, phone lines will be unmuted. If you would like to speak, please state your name. We ask that only one member of the public speak at a time. All persons will be allotted 10 minutes to speak as per our procedural bylaw. We ask that if the meeting recesses, that any callers hang up and call back in as the meeting reconvenes. This will help with call quality. Please note this call is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website and/or social media. To eliminate background noise, please mute your phone during the meeting. Everyone has a right to be present at council meetings and council committee meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of this meeting may 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. I will just ask any callers on the line to just please mute your phone. Due to the hybrid nature of the meeting, we will conduct a roll call. Reeve Link is here. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Here in person.
Councillor Wilson.
Present.
Councillor Bigger. Here. Councillor Eichert.
Present.
Councillor Kester.
Present.
Councillor Armstrong. Additionally, our voting procedure will be modified for our hybrid meetings. I will call for any councillor who is opposed to a motion to indicate verbally. For any motions with expressed opposition, we will conduct a roll call vote. We have an agenda before us. Does anybody have any additions or changes?
Good morning, Reeve Link. Brian from administration. I have just 2 additions. Under 2.3.1, just signing of a tri-municipal letter for RCMP watch clerk. And then I'm just trying to schedule an appointment time for consultant Doug Henderson from TSI at 1 p.m.
Joe Henderson, we've added those.
And I have a request for permission to attend the conference, Alberta Care, if it goes through.
Let's do that under 2.32. Any other additions? A motion to approve the agenda.
Also move.
Councillor Bigger has moved. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We have the minutes in the package starting on page 3 for our March 2nd regular council meeting.
Be accepted as circulated.
Councillor Armstrong moves. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Move to 1.32. The minutes from the public hearings from March 2nd.
I'll move to approve as circulated.
Councillor Wilson has moved. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? The motion is carried. We'll move to 2.11 for bylaw 2021-03. I'm not sure if somebody's presenting. If you are, you're muted. Oh,
Mike, are you presenting this one?
Yeah, sorry about that. Through the chair, the manager of technical services is just having some technical problems here. He's presenting this one. 1 second. Okay, sorry, I'll present this one. So on page 20 of your package, you'll see the bylaw 2021-03. It's a road closure request up in the hamlet of Rosebud. So you'll see on page 24 the site plan showing the location, and on the in the bottom part of that picture, the area of closure that's proposed here. We received this request earlier last year, gone through the process right now. This closure is for a portion of that road allowance that will allow access. Currently, there's an access to the parcel of land on the north there that's accessing through this adjacent parcel. So this closure will facilitate that access. The resolution is for first reading of this bylaw as well as scheduling the public hearing.
council's wishes.
I'll move first reading.
Councillor Kester has moved first reading. Excuse me. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Second resolution for the public hearing.
Excuse me, I'll move that council approve scheduling the public hearing for bylaw 2021-03 for May 4th, 2021, based on the information presented in the RFD.
Councillor Eichert has moved. Is there any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.3. In a previous resolution, we had discussed drafting a letter regarding the watch clerk funding and advocacy to Minister Madhu for that to be considered as a modifier to the police funding model that we pay now for part of our provincial policing for the RCMP. Not sure if administration wants to speak to the letter in the process, just reaching out to the other municipalities.
Yeah, through the Reeve to all of council. So I have close contacts in the protective services divisions for each respective municipality. So we work together. There was quite a bit of back and forth after a couple councils ago when we talked about this and bringing it forward. And all of the municipalities are in support. And each municipality, from administration to their councils, have reviewed the letter in its current form and are very happy to co-sign it as well. Thank you.
So we'd be looking for a resolution to approve signing the tri-municipal letter and sending it to Minister Madhu.
I can put that forward, but also I'm wondering if we should include that information that the RCMP had sent us when we were talking about watch clerk funding. All that data and stuff should go with that.
That's a good idea.
Because that backs all this up, or any other presentations that have gone to other municipalities. I think we've had one or two over the years.
Yeah, that last one that Strathmore RCMP provided does have really compelling information. That's a great idea. You could include, add that to the motion to sign the letter.
Yeah, send it.
And
all
if
the
administration
information
can just confirm with the other municipalities that they're okay with adding that as an addendum. And we maybe just want to check with our CMP as well. That would be great.
As an appendix, we could certainly do that and circulate it.
Perfect.
For sure. Thank you.
You're putting that motion on the floor?
Absolutely.
Any discussion? So I believe the draft letter's in front of everybody. Councillor Kester, do you have a copy of the letter as well?
No, I don't see it.
Can administration ensure that a copy is emailed to Councillor Kester? And we'll just give a minute for it to go through just so that you can have a look at it. Or I can read it. Maybe I'll read it and then...
Sorry, just for information, it was included yesterday in the supplemental email that was sent.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Yes.
Through the chair, I have a question of staff. Rocky Ford and Standard, are they now part of the Strathmore detachment?
So they are, but this was regarding, so we pay for one watch clerk, Wheatland County does. Strathmore pays for 2 watch clerks and Rocky View County pays for 1. So we didn't include all of the municipalities that are served by the detachment, just the municipalities that were providing funding. Because it doesn't really affect other municipalities who are not paying for the watch clerk, if that makes sense. The watch clerk affects them, but because they don't share in the cost of it.
Maybe, but I would CC them.
Yeah,
the
that's
letter.
a good idea.
If nothing else, I would
For sure.
CC them, because it does affect them.
It absolutely does, because they benefit from the increased police presence and that type of thing that results from having the administrative support from the watch clerk program.
And it was brought up at WRP.
Yeah, that there were benefits for sure. Councillor Kester, have you accessed the letter?
Yes, I have. My phone is screwy this morning. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Is there any further discussion or any questions? So there's a motion on the floor to sign the letter, to copy the letter also to the villages of Hazar, Rocky Ford, and Standard, and to attach as an appendix, provided we receive authorized case study, or the business case that they had. Margaret will word that far better, but that's the gist of it. Do you have any questions? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.32. Councillor Armstrong, attendance at Alberta Care Conference.
It's difficult to get it set up, but they have finally got it set up for...
Oh yeah, microphone. Thanks, Scott.
Alberta Care has had some trouble getting their spring seminar set up, but they have finally got a date set for it. It may yet be canceled because the government fell back on their promise again yesterday, but I haven't heard yet, so this is a request to attend. April 14th and 14th to the 16th. Thanks. Tony Plain.
Somebody could put a motion on the floor for consideration of approval.
I also move.
Councillor Bigger has moved. Any questions? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Armstrong.
So don't thank us.
Okay.
You're not going anywhere, so don't thank us.
We'll move to 2.41, Council Resolution Tracker.
Yes, good morning, Council. Brian from Administration. On page 26 of your agenda package is the Council Resolution Tracker. As always, everything in green has been completed. Anything in yellow is in progress. If there's any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions for CAO Henderson? Once again, just to thank you CAO Henderson and to your senior leadership team. This is a really help. A motion to accept the council resolution tracker's information.
So moved.
Councillor Armstrong has moved. Is there any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.42, Human Resources Policy, Hours of Work and Rest.
Good morning, Council. On page 33 of your agenda package is the revised policy 6.2.4, Hours of Work and Rest. So what we have done is we've just updated this to reflect our actual hours of operations coming up in the summer and moving forward. So during 2020, we definitely had a reduction of hours just due to the pandemic, COVID in general. So we definitely kind of cut back costs and kind of just levels of service. So with this policy, we're cutting back from the original hours kind of in the policy from 2019, but we're kind of returning more to a normal kind of hours of operation for municipalities. So public works hours and ag hours are 44 hours during from April 1st to November 30th. And yeah, that's about it. If there's any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions? Looking for a motion to approve the revision. Going to grab coffee for everybody.
I'll move it.
Councillor Armstrong is the only one awake. No, just joking. Councillor Armstrong has moved. Any discussion or any questions? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Move to 2.43, request for letter of support for Strathmore Handy Bus.
Yes. Good morning, Council. Brian from Administration again. Page 42 of your agenda package. Just two standard letters of support for the Strathmore Handy Bus, just for requirement of a grant that they're applying for. Very basic, just in general. The letters are completed already. Just waiting for Council approval. If there's any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Move the recommendation.
Councillor Wilson has moved. Any discussion? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.44, Wheatland Housing Management Body, Municipal Requisition.
Yes, Council, on page 45 of your agenda package is just some correspondence between myself and Vicki Cook, the CAO of the WHMB. Just some general follow-up questions on inquiring information on the hospice requisitioning amounts and the annual WHMB amounts as well. So the correspondence kind of goes into detail on page 47. There was an attachment that we included. And then the actual kind of email correspondence back and forth is between pages 49 and 52. If there is any questions about that, please let me know.
Administration has provided some information from the Housing Board there. This was in follow-up to a request for some have been being calculated. Any questions or discussion?
There are no questions or discussions. I'll move that Council accept the correspondence as information.
Councillor Eckert has moved. I do just have a question for administration. CAO Henderson, have you compared how the requisitions are being calculated to how the Housing Act lays out requisitions for lodges?
So my understanding and interpretation under the Housing Act would be that the WHMB could requisition us for any deficit for operating costs for lodging, for housing accommodations of the previous year. So it appears it could just be requisitioning us a little bit. They have been doing it previously. The amount probably should change year over year, so that I think they could be over-requisite, or maybe giving us a little bit higher of a requisition than required. However, they probably do require some capital as well, just like general equipment around the building. So it's kind of be good for them to maybe get something in writing and just provide us kind of what they're using those extra funds for. And then as for the hospice requisition, it definitely notes that they can't really do that. I think they would need ministerial approval or confirmation from, or agreement from all municipalities kind of being requisitioned for that one. So there's a question.
Yes, thank you, CAO Henderson. So some of this came from, we saw a resolution not at our spring convention, but at the fall convention from the MD of Greenview. They brought forward a resolution that didn't pass around housing requisitions and just some of the complexity of it, compliance with the legislation, confusion for municipalities and how it's supposed to be done, how it is done, things like that. I'm not sure why the resolution didn't pass. I'm not sure if it was just not a complete understanding of what the resolution was trying to get across or that type of thing, but that was when I actually went in to see like how the requisitions are supposed to work or that type of thing. My main concern, or I guess hope, would be that we are in alignment with the legislation that governs them. So I recognize it's how it's been done historically, and I don't think it's any substantial difference in dollars or anything like that. Because this is a legislation that applies to the lodge and applies to how we would steward our finances, I think it's important that we are aligned with how it's laid out in the Act under requisitions. And then I think it makes our financials stronger, because if we're more compliant with the legislation, it could improve the governance for the housing board if they are compliant with the legislation that they operate under. So, but these are all obviously my own personal thoughts. So I'm at the will of the board. I in no way want to make it cumbersome or onerous on the administration of the housing board. It's nothing like that. I don't see the requisitions necessarily decreasing substantially. It's just more in terms of how they're calculated and being aligned with the legislation.
I think it's.
I have a short comment too.
Yeah, Deputy Reeve Clausen was first, and then we'll go to Councillor Kester. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Kester.
Yeah, we just had our audited financial statement passed at our last, yes, we made a profit, but after inquiring of our auditors, it appears that our budget was a balanced budget. That means, zero difference. And our actuals are very close to the balanced budget. Like, we didn't make any money per se on requisitions, rental income, LAP grants, any of that. We were pretty well balanced. Our increase was from COVID. The increases that we got from COVID, because some of the rooms weren't empty, and quite a little less than money for protective equipment and extra money for working. And plus that, some of our expenses were lower because of COVID, and I guess you would call it, that's where we made our money. And it also says in the Act, I believe, that the Housing Board can carry a surplus, and we can requisition for the surplus, I'm pretty sure, to cover expenses. So in the last few years, we've shingled the lodge. We've painted the exterior. We're always painting the interior as we remodel rooms and as residents move in and out. But we painted the exterior, and we put all new windows in the lodge. We insulated the whole attic and sprinkler systems inside and out. So there's numerous things that we've accomplished in the property. And also, a lot of times we were fortunate to secure grants for most of it too. So I know we have a surplus there. And so everyone knows most of that money from that surplus come from years ago when the lodge actually managed home care in the lodge. That's before Bayshore received the contract. So the lodge had a home care contract. That's what give us the money in the reserve. So without going historically back and figuring everything out, we try to run a balanced budget. We're not out to get anybody, that's for sure. And we're well aware of having to get signed operating agreements for hospice requisition. And if there's any capital building to go on, you have to get signed capital requisitions. I don't know if they call them requisitions. I think that the new terms are maybe operating funding and capital funding to keep away from the word requisition so as not to confuse it. These orders, once all the councils agree, are signed by the minister, I believe, and then life carries on. There are quite a few of these agreements in the province. Everything changed going forward last year when the province came out with the expression of interest and Strathmore was on a priority basis. All our planning future, I'll say, is hinging on the outcome of that expression of interest. Originally, we thought we would hear something by last Christmas. Nothing's come by. We're still waiting. We've got requests in, but nobody's letting us know what's going on. And whichever way that expression of interest goes will determine what is required going forward, I guess. I can't answer any more than that. We are waiting for that expression of interest. So I'm thinking any day, but it's already been 4 months waiting. So that's about all I really have to say. If there's any other questions, I can endeavor to answer. But.
Thanks, Councillor Kester. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Yeah, first talking about I'm glad there's some explanation for the requisition, so when my taxpayers ask me, I can say, yes, we're following the guidelines and, it's how it's working instead of it's the same fee every year. So we've got some backing on that because it should change from year to year, I would think. But after listening to Glenn, the question I want to ask is, so we're waiting for this expression of interest. Has the Lodge Building Committee Board committed any funds to the new Lodge site prior to that coming down? Like design, building, blueprints, that kind of stuff, or any of that? Because I would think we would have to know if we have an agreement first with the province.
We have, we've had a assessment done by Gary Gordon, and we're carrying forward with that assessment. We went out to tender and hired an architect to get the schematic and the budget so we can go to the province with a shovel-ready project. It seems that is how everybody gets things done. So we had our reserves and we have that money, and that is what we are spending on this schematic drawing. The schematic drawing does not take into effect any of the expression of interest, that would come as an addition, I guess, to what we already have. We are just going after our, I don't know how much time you want me to take, but anyway, this Gary Gordon assessment was passed by the board, and it is part of our strategic plan of the lodge, and then it is sent every year. A strategic plan has to go to the Ministry of Housing, and that plan was sent, and it's been okayed. We're in constant updates with the ministry, telling them where we're at. And likewise, our audited financial statements every year are sent to the ministry for their approval. So they're well aware of how we requisition. And for those that aren't from the board, we seem to be limited income. We're in we increase the rent. Another year we increase the parking they pay for their cars and cable and whatnot. And the third year is maybe it's the cable. It's broke down into 3 areas. So every year there's an increase to the seniors, but it's not an increase on everything they pay for out of pocket. They pay for laundry service, parking, and their food and stuff. That's another one too. So yeah, we like to do it individually. So sometimes the last couple of years we've been pretty good with the lodge because, as I mentioned, we did these projects and we received some grant funding, which really helped out. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Scott. It's some ways it's kind of complex, and other ways when you understand it all, it gets to be kind of, makes sense. I won't say it's simple, but.
Yeah, I was more looking for the new construction site because there was that expression of interest from the province that we haven't heard back from. I was just wondering if we've moved forward in any way, shape with that, with the site and construction, if we're waiting on that expression of interest answer and provincial funding answer as well.
So, Councillor Custer.
We've asked the town, and we said we would. The lodge would pay for it if it's a favorable. So it's been drilled, and we should have an environmental thing done in about 4 weeks, I'm guessing. This new build has nothing really to do with the expression of interest, except that there's room on that site. If the expression of interest is favorable, we can add on to it to accommodate for the additional, I think it's about 60 rooms that's extra on the expression of interest. I think that's about what it is. It's for a total of 110 anyway. No, we don't have funding from the province. We have to get to a shovel-ready project, and then we present it to the province, and we have to negotiate then. But actually, turning in the only money spent on the site is drilling for environmental, see if it's an appropriate site, and all the plans are for that site. There's we looked at, I don't know how many sites around town, half a dozen or so. And really, this one here, all the boxes were checked with this site.
Oh, so if I'm hearing you correct, then the site that you're looking at, you have basically option A and option B. If you get the expression of interest gets an answer, you have basically I'll just say for a wing of the building that would be added or taken off if it's not there. Is that what you're saying?
Would be added, yeah. Would be added, not taken off. It's not added on now. But there is room there, and it's kind of penciled in, like future expansion. I think a lot now.
Councillor Wilson.
Just a question.
Thanks, Glenn.
Glenn, how much will be in the reserves after you guys spend money for the schematics and the process to get it to a shovel-ready project, which I thought it already was?
Right now, we've committed, off memory, I think 580,000, and that'll get us to pre-construction design, which is a more detailed schematic, plus cost of the building. Plus, right now, we're at, I think, 42 million plus or minus 10%. When we're done this phase, we should be plus or minus, I'm guessing, 6 is. The more planning you do, the less amount of contingency. It's the same with everything we do, even in the county. So then I think we would have roughly maybe $1 million left in reserves. I think we have 1.5-ish. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right. You think you got
Madonna. Yeah, something like that, isn't it? Yeah. We've only pending the environmental outcomes and the town of Strathmore and motion on transferring the site.
So just one comment, kind of, I guess, for expectation management. I was just checking if there were any announcements in the province regarding those long-term care spaces, and I can't find any announcements yet. I did, though, just for clarity, come across just an old news article from CBC, and it has Minister Shandro, quotes from Minister Shandro, and a little bit of information regarding the request for expression of interest. And in that article, it does say that the proposals to offer continuing care in existing, and the term they use is underutilized facilities. And I know I've heard with other hats that I wear, just that the request for expression of interest was significantly oversubscribed to the tune of, I don't recall the number, but huge response for the request for expression of interest. In this news article, Minister Shandro says that they won't know how many new spaces that they can add until they see the submissions from the proponents, at least hundreds at this point, but we don't have a specific number at this point until we get those submissions. He does say in this article that there may be a future announcement with a capital component to it, a program he's referencing as ASLE 2.0. And I did notice when I was reviewing the provincial budget that there is no capital funding, kind of purse, if you will, for new capital builds. So yeah, there's some maintenance and renewal funding, that type of thing, just for expectation management about what the province is prepared to contribute to housing capital projects in the current budget.
I'm well aware of that. But in AHS, I believe there's still a free, when you do add up all the numbers, about 160 million left for new beds. It is an expectation, if this expression of interest goes our way, because we are still a priority, irrefutable of all the applications they got in for across the province, there is still a priority list. Strathmore is still a priority. If we were to secure the 110 plus the 4 hospice, there's a strong possibility it would pay for the mortgage. And that's what we're going forward with the funding model, to see at current payouts, we don't have to have capital money. All we're asking for is a hand up, not a handout. Give us the contract back that we once had, and we might be able to do it. The last lodge was remodeled substantially, and a mortgage was taken out. It was paid for, by most part, by home care. So this contract we're looking for is more than just permanent care. There is the money that is paid for those seniors to receive that care, no matter where they go in the province, is paid. We're just asking to pay it to the lodge. Pay it to where the seniors resided and made their life. That's all we're asking. We haven't asked for capital. So our hopes are still very high. That's achievable. But I can't give you any numbers until we get this, go through the process. And that's what we're doing.
I'm just going to draw us back to the agenda item for the requisitions. I've expressed my personal opinion. I've heard Councillor Clausen. The issue will be, I would check with CAO Henderson, but I believe we may have the requisition already, or the Housing Board members may know. And I'm just looking if there's a council direction to try and align with the legislation, or CAO Henderson, I'm assuming perhaps you even have the requisition already for this year?
Yes, we do. So it would be the 450,000 divided by, and it would be broken down by that equalized assessment. I can pull the exact number. It just might take me a couple minutes.
No, that's okay. I'm just trying to draw council's attention to the timeliness of, if there's a direction to align with the legislation, we should be, make that direction as a council. If it's not an issue for anybody else, I will drop it.
I've got a question to administration. How much more work is this to do? If it's not substantial, I think this year we are where we're at. We can't sort of change that. But how much work is it? I think it's more of an education thing, because I still haven't wrapped my head around just exactly what this is. But it would definitely be better that a requisition, the number might not change at all. We might still agree to pay the 2/3 of the $450,000. But it would definitely make it cleaner and more transparent looking, that if it was a requisition for X amount of dollars, and then there was X amount of dollars for capital funding, and then we would know what the capital funding is. Because sort of up until just recently, I just assumed that the requisition was the requisition. I didn't know there were government rules that we had to follow, which seems to me pretty obvious we're not. I don't have a problem with that. It just would make it more transparent if we can just say, yeah, the requisition is X amount of dollars, and that dollars is for the operating loss, and then we're going to add on to it X amount of dollars for capital funding.
Yeah,
right.
It's laid out.
That's just my feeling.
And the Act does, there is specification that the amount can be to establish or continue a reserve for exactly the purposes that have been utilized. The lodge has been incredibly well maintained. They do a phenomenal job of making it, a comfortable, safe home for our seniors, and that it's really important that be able to be continued. So I have no issue with that. Part of my concern is talking to colleagues in the province. There has been increasing scrutiny around housing boards. In some areas, there is a move towards amalgamating boards, regionalization, reviews of governance, disbanding of boards, things like that. I want to ensure that everything that we're doing is compliant with legislation and not going to be a cause for concern for our seniors. So that's where I'm coming from, and I think as we know better, we do better. Or when I know better, I try and do better. I try and fix where I see where I might not be doing something, in alignment with legislation or that type of thing. So just so that just so we're clear, I don't have an issue with the amount. I believe it is fair. It likely will be needed.
So is it easier to to do that next year, or do you think we can do it this year? Probably not this year, right? It's 23rd.
Yeah.
I guess Brian would know that.
So, yeah, so just Brian from administration, just a couple points. So the first point, the requisition for this year is $298,350. So just a shade under 300,000. It's fairly consistent year over year. And then if you were to do it that way, so what you would have to do, or council and administration would have to do, is we would have to wait for the lodge's audited financial statement to be completed and then approved by the board. And then any shortfall would kind of be covered at that point. So it would push things back a bit. Not saying that's a bad way to do it, but you probably should also provide notice to the lodge as well. That's the kind of the process that we're going to undertake, is wait for that the approval to be done and then kind of move forward that way. So I would probably advise just to kind of keep it consistent this year, and then maybe just notify them that that would be the process.
Yeah, and I think it even could just be board members. Like, as you're aware, you can take that back to your board governance, like to your board, and go from there. And then,
so let's just play this out. So if you appear to want to follow what it says, you only cover the deficit. So we have no deficit last year, so there would be no requisition this year. The lodge would have to get a loan and fund $400,000 and pay interest on it and everything for our cash flow. Next audited statement, it would show that we were in deficit of the $450,000. Then we would requisition for that, plus the carrying costs and interest, and that would be our requisition. And then on a carry forward basis, the lodge would have $450,000 operating line of credit plus the costs, and that's what we'd be requisitioning for every year. So you'd, in essence, maybe you would postpone your requisition for a year. And don't forget that we're allowed to carry a reserve. So we don't have to come for you for new boilers, roofing, and all that kind of stuff. Forward, that's what it would look like if you wanted to wait.
To find a housing board that does requisition this way and just see how they do it. I don't know exactly how you would do that administratively. I'm just looking at it from the governance perspective. And it might be worth just seeing how other housing boards do it. I would assume that you would look for the deficit without requisitions, but CAO Henderson certainly has a stronger understanding of finance than I would. But perhaps we could just leave it that the housing board members, I don't know if we could maybe put a motion on the floor.
I can take it back to the board and let them know the discussion, what we have. And we can let our CAO, Vicky, inquire through ASHA. It's quite a strong representation of all the housing, most of the housing boards in the province, and see how they do it. That would probably be the easiest and most.
That's a great idea.
Easiest way to do it.
Yeah, that's
and as far as amalgamations and boards getting together for costs, this is the second time this has come. A few years ago they've done it, and they've done it this year. The talks were not pointed at Wheatland Housing. We inquired, get nervous. We have close to 200 beds we manage. There's lots of them out there, or fewer every time they amalgamate, that are substantially smaller than us. that wasn't addressed to us. We got clarification from the ministry. So ministry has no problems with Wheeland Housing and the way we manage. They like our report on the lodge operations, audited financial statements, and we report to them on our social housing with deficit financing budget that they approve or not approve how much money we get, and we work it backwards. Plus, they also get the audited financial statements for that. So the only thing I can see is if we get a line of credit and borrow $500,000 to do this deficit requisition. If you think, but that's going to incur extra costs. And it'll end up, at the end of the day, we're doing a balanced budget, be much the same. And don't forget that we're allowed to put in for a reserve for our maintenance, so we could come up with a certain percentage, I guess, or of what it costs for maintenance. We can do an average of the last half a dozen years, and we'll do a running average on what we've been putting in for capital costs. I'm talking maintenance, new fridges. We replaced the coolers, boilers, hot water tanks, roofing, windows, ramps outside, sprinklers. The list goes on and on. There's always something every day. Fire protection modules, they're all very expensive.
Yeah, so Glenn?
We could do a list of that, yeah.
I know I'm new to this, but so if we're requisitioning $450,000 this year, and if that's how we're going to do it, we do it the same as usual this year, and you've got expenses of looks like less than $100,000. So the other $350,000 can go into a marked reserve now from this year, because you said that we didn't have a deficit this year.
We used it all up. We used up the total $450,000 last year. We had none of it left.
So you're only
the only thing we have left is from the COVID relief. That is our money we didn't use.
So,
but going forward, am I wrong?
I don't want us to get too much into the administrative side of it. I'm just trying to look at it from a governance role. And so I think rather than getting into some of the administrative details of how it might look or that type of thing, I like the idea. ASHA is an excellent resource. Perhaps if we had just a motion directing our board representatives to follow up through their work on the board with this. And then the only reason I wouldn't mind a resolution is just so that it's a good reminder to have it brought back to council, just so that we're aware. And perhaps this is how all housing boards do it across the province, and it's interpreted to align with this. Then we know that, and we know that, the governance is not going to be an issue. Obviously, this is all submitted, and the Alberta Seniors in Housing does review the financial statements. Like, I'm not suggesting there's anything, sinister being done or anything, inappropriate. I'm just looking that we are aligning with legislation. So if that's council's wishes, we could have a motion to direct just the board members to do that. It would be up to the housing board, primarily their administration, to determine how it's done, or if it is already compliant with the legislation, and then if that can just come back to council so that we know it's being done.
Amber, instead of directing board members, I think it would be more prudent to authorize administration to write a letter to the CAO, and she can bring it up at a board meeting. And then the board has a letter tracking it, same as Wheeland County would have the motion authorizing the letter. And then we can deal with the letter and we could answer it back by a letter and close the circle.
Yep, I'm okay. I don't have any preference how it's dealt with. For me, it's just, I just hoping for compliance with the legislation or some reassurance that it is compliant. So I'm not picky about the mechanism of how we do that. Council's wishes. Is there a preference for a letter between CAOs, board members? Do the other board members have a preference? I'm
The letter's
flexible.
fine. As long as, like, I was a little upset that Vicky thought that she was being questioned.
And it's not, I want to stress that's not the case. It's just as we become aware of the things, we question things about our own operator. And we do it here
As
all
long as
the
they
time.
know that it's just a procedure question, it's definitely not about them.
No, of course. Genuinely so grateful for the care that the Housing Board provides under your governance to our seniors and to the vulnerable people through the social housing as well in our area, because that is extremely valuable. And we've seen, particularly over the last year, how much care and attention has gone into that. So there aren't enough words to describe the appreciation for that. So if someone wants to put a motion on the floor, we do have a 10 a.m. appointment.
I can make the motion to put a letter forward to the Wheatland Housing Board encompassing the discussion we had and to be reviewed, I guess, sent back to us and signed by you.
So you'd like to review it before it goes forward?
Well, yeah,
or?
so we make sure we got in cap. I mean, there's a lot discussed today. I can't craft everything that's here, so I think it's good that we all look at it before.
So perhaps a motion to direct administration to draft a letter just outlining our discussion today for review at our next council meeting, and then we can approve it to go to the Housing Board.
Yes.
Does that capture? Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We do have a 10 a.m. appointment regarding Lakes of Muirfield. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Custer.
Oh, sorry, it's CAO Henderson.
Oh, sorry, CAO Henderson.
I also don't believe council voted on accepting that correspondence to the from the WHMB as information, just as an FYI.
Right.
I think the motion was made, just not voted on.
Yes, you're right. My apologies. We had a motion on the floor already to approve the correspondence as information. Any discussion on that? My apologies, everybody. Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Thanks, CAO Henderson. Now we will move to Lakes and Muirfield governance.
Good morning, Council. Matt Boscariel from Administration, just speaking to the Lakes of Muirfield Governance report found on page 142 of your agenda package. Just before I start, on the phone, listening in and available for questions from the representatives of the Lakes of Muirfield community, we have Tom Morse as the Homeowners Association President. Joining him, but not speaking potentially if there are any questions, is Michelle Hannum, is the Homeowners Association Vice President and Phase 1 Board of Directors President. Mike Hebert is the Homeowners Association Secretary. Sean Crawford is the Homeowners Association Members at Large. Tom, Mike, and Sean are 3 of the 4 members of the Amalgamation Subcommittee, just for your information before I proceed. So on page 142 of your agenda package is the recommendation from administration. I'll just go through it quite quickly before I get into the heart of the report. Basically, the first part of the resolution suggests that council support the HOA for carrying out the process of condo strata dissolution. The specific strata are listed there as the condominium corporations. The second part of the resolution indicates, as per their bylaws, which are shown on page 143 of the agenda package, that 75% approval in the community is reached for phase 1 of the development, that the county authorized phase 2 and phase 3 to amalgamate. We won't hear about that until there is a special meeting called called in the community or a full-on AGM called where they go through the presentation of how this works. They'll have previously solicited residents in the community for their support, and so it's attached to this. And then the third part of the report indicates that no county funds be appropriated for this whole kind of dynamic on our end, just to see if there are any risks associated with this process. The risks associated were found on page 143. There is potentially some expenses that each homeowner may have to undertake in terms of going through land titles and the rest to find out and go through that formal process. So just the third part of this resolution indicates that no funds be appropriated towards this. This is strictly an HOA residential kind of initiative that they're looking for, and we're just really looking for county support on this end. So just basically by way of background, the dynamic of this is that there is 3 phases of bare land condominium, and then one HOA manages this. This was originally how it was at the community at large, registered with Corporations Canada. In the current configuration, however, each phase is responsible for setting up a separate board of directors, and each board of directors would then contract for services required in the individual phases. That's how it's currently set out. So including the contributions to individual reserve funds. Each phase is responsible for paying monthly fees into the HOA, who would then disperse the required contracts and repair and maintenance payments. So if you can imagine, you have one HOA dispersing for different contracts, different phases. There's a lot going on in there. And so with this streamlined amalgamation of the condo corps, it basically streamlines everything into one so that we have kind of a unison across the board in that development, which really positions that development in the county's best interest as a result of some interested parties looking to buy. They can further easier understand when they purchase a property what's going on, where their money's going, and what service provisions they're receiving on that end. So that's part of the reason why we are recommending that we do support this initiative moving forward. Administration have communicated with each associated risk to the HOA president, and the HOA is committed to moving forward. In my opinion, in administration's opinion, the risks associated are low on the county's end. Therefore, administration believe that the development will be better positioned for a stronger governance and a higher level of attraction for future development. This amalgamation proposal is contingent on phase 1, again, of reaching 75% approval during the special meeting, and the date is to be determined. And we have some representatives on the phone who can potentially answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do the representatives from the Homeowners Association, would you like to address council? Tom, Mike, Sean, I'm not sure if any of you would like to address council. Okay. Does council have any questions regarding the proposed change?
I guess so. Does phase 1 look a lot different, or the amalgamation of them? Like, is there going to be more directors? Is it going to change at all?
So the composition in terms of restructuring the bylaws?
Restructuring.
I can't answer that definitively.
That would be up to them.
That would be totally up to them.
And this is an initiative coming from them, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
So I've attended some of the HOA meetings, and this is an initiative directed by the residents there. They wanted to get our support first. They have a whole plan rolling out that they'll go door to door to people, explaining the costs, things like that. And they know that they're aware that there might be some cost to the individuals. But in the bigger picture, they feel that this is the best for the development. It is very confusing. It's taken me a while to get my head around how it's going, but it will simplify it in the future for sure.
Well, even just the capacity to run 3 boards versus one.
And being that we are the owner of lots now, we are, phase 2 and phase 3 for us, right? So it makes it easier for the long run, and when like I foresee it, as it gets bigger and more people in there, when they want to come up with a plan for the community and they're working with us, it's much easier. So. And then they don't have to have different bank accounts for different phases. There's just so much.
On all the contracts, and yeah, it's a ton of streamlining.
Because there's different contractors for different areas and all that kind of stuff. It's just simplification. But again, they have to go back to the residents, and it's on them to figure it out. And if they get it, then they just wanted us to give us a heads up of what's going on, so we give it support.
I believe I heard a representative from the Homeowners Association.
Yeah, my apologies. We're having technical difficulties with the mute here, so hopefully you can hear me now.
Yeah, are you able to speak just a little bit louder?
Certainly.
Wonderful. Welcome. And if you can just state your name for the record, please, sir.
Absolutely. My name is Tom Morse. That's spelled M-O-R-S-E, just like your code.
Perfect. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. And essentially what both Matt and I believe Scott has put forth is exactly where we're at this point. And we of course have done a straw poll among the residents, and we're getting a lot of support for it, because everybody recognizes how cumbersome the current setup is, and how it'll only get worse as more homeowners and the three phases are set up. So it just makes sense to, and it's already been touched upon. I mean, to have three different contracts going on, and with different vendors, and being three different boards, it just makes more sense from an economic standpoint and from an efficiency standpoint and that's why we're pursuing this quite aggressively.
Excellent. Thank you for that context. Does anybody have any questions? So there is a recommended resolution from administration.
I'll make the motion that Council supports the HOA carrying out the process of the Strato condo dissolution at a special meeting called for the residents within the Lakes of Mayfield development, including Condo Strata Phase 1 Condominium Corporation number 0710284 and Phase 2 Condominium Corporation number 0811158 into one homeowners association, and further was reached in Phase 1 of the development that the county authorized Phase 2 and Phase 3 to amalgamate into one HOA upon receiving notice of 75% approval from the HOA, and further that no county funds be appropriated toward this initiative. And I hope I got that right.
Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. And thank you to those running. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
We wish you well with this streamlining. Should be great for the community. It's a fantastic community out there, and I'm excited for the...
I drove through there yesterday. There's 6 houses under construction right now.
I drove through there yesterday too. Excellent. Sorry for making you wait, Mr. Clem. Thanks for your patience.
We'll make you wait 2 more minutes.
Oh, okay, yeah. We'll make you wait 2 more minutes. We'll call a break for 5. We'll reconvene at 10:15. Donna wanted to be fully attentive.
That's right.
Good morning. We'll call the meeting back to order. Mr. Clem has been extremely patient with us this morning. We're going to move to 2.45, Assessment 101 report. Good morning.
Thank you, Reeve and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to go over highlights of Assessment 101. As noted on page 56 of the agenda information, I've just highlighted
I'll just ask anybody who's calling in if you can just mute your phone. We're ready.
So as highlighted on page 56 of the agenda, there's the simplified interpretations of the assessment definitions for property tax purpose. Class 1 is residential, and one of the key things is market value. Even though it might be the typical residence, it can also include a vacant acreage, a vacant Hamlet parcel that's not farm per se, and it could be a acreage with a garage or a shop that doesn't have a residence on it. Class 2 is non-residential. Essentially, a commerce or industry takes place. It's mostly assessed at market value, but Class 2 also includes linear assessment, which is the wells and pipelines and power generation and so on, and those components are assessed at regulated rates. Class 3 is farmland, and essentially there has to be some sort of farming operations occurring on the land besides the typical, forage crops and pasturing. There's some other unique ones in the sense of raising bees, fish, birds, or even sod qualifies it as farmland as well. And it's assessed at a regulated rate. The provincial base rate is $350 per acre if it's 100% land. There is no land in the county, it's 100%. I think our highest is around the 90% mark. So if we crunched out the 350 times the 90%, the assessed value now would be around $50,400, which is significantly lower than what the market value would be. So I just want to make sure you have the distinction that farmland assessment really has no bearing to market value. Then we go on to Class 4, which is machinery and equipment, and that's essentially anything used in the processing and manufacturing of a product. The most common types of M&E that exist through the county is oil and gas related, separators, dehydes, booster comps. It gets a bit of a preferential assessment treatment in the sense that when it's new, it gets a 25% immediate depreciation, and it's assessed at a statutory level of 77%. So if you crunch that out, that would be essentially about 58% of its value. Now, we do have regulated manual for the smaller type facilities like separators and dehydes, but when you get to larger compressors or gas plants, we actually have to get reported cost on that equipment before we can prepare the assessment. Any questions on this?
I do have one question, and it's actually just come up recently, a question to me. Can you clarify a little bit more about farming operations? So if you had a site that is primarily farming, what happens if there are secondary uses on the site, and how far encompassing would the term farming operations be?
Okay, so I guess it always depends on this type of secondary uses. If there's some sort of non-residential type of use,
right, that would be more specific.
We would, as long as we're aware of it, if there's been a development permit, we would capture it. If not, we do a reinspection cycle once every 5 years, so we would probably capture it at some point in a reinspection cycle. And essentially, from an assessment perspective, the land that is used for the non-residential component, let's say if it's hypothetically 5 acres, we would assess that at a market value and classify it as non-residential. If there's any improvements associated with that non-residential use, i.e. a fence and a shop and whatever else, that would be assessed at non-residential as well. And the balance of the land, as long as it's still actively farmed and meets the definition of farmland, it would still be assessed as farmland.
And then I've had questions about, say, value-added ag. Say you're doing processing. Let's use canola crushing as an example. Would that, like, I recognize that it uses ag inputs. Would something like that classify as agriculture, or then that would become non-residential?
That would be called non-residential. Once you go past if you do some sort of value added to the product, so if you're just storing the canola in the bins, still farm operation. You start crushing canola and making oil, or even just crushing it to supply a crush to a third party to process it further, then that's part of that. There would be some of that would be part of the machinery equipment classification because it's used in the process of manufacturing of a product. Essentially, once you change the state of a product, like canola to crushed canola, if you will, wheat to flour, those kind of things qualifies it as combination of non-residential use and machinery equipment.
Okay, that's perfect. That will help me verbalize better when people are asking me, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions regarding what Mr. Clem has presented so far?
Okay, so on page 57 is some key dates to be aware of for the assessment process. The market valuation date is July 1st, the year preceding the tax year. So for 2021 tax year, the values that I just completed the assessment on are based on the July 1st market value for the properties that are assessed at market value. Well, actually, even the regulated valuation base is based on July 1st. Physical condition date is December 31st. So prime example of how to understand that is if you start building a house on September 1st, it wasn't there on July 1st, but by December 31st, you got it to the lockup stage. Even though it wasn't there July 1st, it's still assessable because it existed on on December 31st of 2020, or the year preceding the tax year. On the flip side of that, if a house got removed, or unfortunate situation of a fire, but it happened prior to December 31st, it would come off the assessment roll for the following year's taxes. The unfortunate situation next door here, we won't be able to do any assessment change on that till this fall for next year's property tax. Machinery equipment, there's sort of two classifications out there. There's what's called the non-designated industrial property. So that would be machinery equipment that's it's sort of non-oil field type facilities, if you will. We have some seed cleaning plants that have some crushers or dryers. We have some non-residential type entities that have machinery equipment components. And there's a key differentiation in the date. December 31st is the date that equipment, if it's operational, it's accessible. However, if it's a designated industrial property, which is oil field related, like a separator dehyde, that equipment has to be operational by October 31st. That date is aligned with the same date that linear assessment has always been, so the wells and pipelines. So for instance, any new wells or pipelines that were drilled, set up after October 31st, they will not be on the assessment roll for the 2020 assessment year for 2021 tax year. So anything drilled in November and December, that'll come on for the following year. But conversely, anything that was done in 2019 of November and December, that'll be on the 2020 assessment roll. Any questions on this? Okay, moving on to page 58. This is a bit of a distinction of linear property and designated industrial property. This came to the assessment terminology, if you will, about 3 years ago. 2018 is when the MGA was sort of revamped to distinguish what used to be just machine equipment in the past now is part of designated industrial property, so like the separators, dehydes at oil gas facilities. It's essentially it's facilities that are regulated by AER, which is Alberta Energy Regulator, AUC, Alberta Utilities Corporation, or National Energy Board. And the linear situation hasn't really changed. It's the same sort of wells and pipelines. That's the bulk of our assessment. We do have some electric power generations and transmission systems. But one thing that has changed is railway used to be just non-residential assessment. Now it's part of linear assessment. And so it's, from an assessment standpoint, it's almost assessed similar still in regulated rates. It's just the classification of it. So on page 59 is a photo example of what can appear to be fairly busy site, if you will. But there is, just to give you a little bit of example, there is several types of assessed property for the buildings and structure. I'll try to use my pointer here. So that silver building there, maybe I'm not sure which one I should, which one would you guys prefer?
I think we're all going that way.
Okay. So that silver building is part of what's called a building structure. It's housing the machinery equipment, which is the separator inside there, and it could be a chem injector and some metering and so on. This tank is part of the process as well, part of the machinery equipment. But then these pump jacks are part of the well assessment, and then there's a pipeline here, and there's a sort of differentiation point. There's what's called an inlet-outlet valve that segregates where the machinery equipment or dip starts and where the pipeline or linear stops. So there's an inlet valve and an outlet valve on either side of that separator, if you will. And so just to give you a little visual context of what's associated with designated industrial property, the building structures, machinery equipment, and the pipelines or the linear assessment. Any questions on that? Now, you probably have seen this slide before. This is on page 60. This is a summary of the linear assessment change that has occurred for the 2020 assessment compared to 2019. As noted, overall linear assessment decreased by about 56 million. Most of that was due to policy change. There's about 49 million lost in policy, and that policy is related to the shallow gas situation. They updated, or they did an adjustment to the valuation of the shallow gas, and because we're heavily associated with shallow gas, we're impacted quite a bit. Just from a kind of a perspective of a potential municipal revenue loss, that equates to about 485,000 lost in revenue. And if we look at the provincial average towards the bottom of that page, we experienced quite a bit more than the average, especially on our well side. We lost 11.65%, where the provincial average is 6.5. So we lost about 5% more. Overall change, we experienced 4.9% reduction comparing that to the overall provincial change. Now,
Can you
page
just say
60.
that one more time? So on the linear, we were down 11.5%.
No, only on the wells and pipelines.
Oh, wells and pipelines.
Yeah, if you look at the middle of that page 60,
Yeah.
if you see the WL line, that's for the wells. That's 49 million it lost due to the, total policy change was 49 million. We lost 53 million in our well assessment. Overall, total for the linear assessment we lost, which equates to 4.29% change or reduction in the assessment.
Perfect. Thank you.
That's
Any other questions on?
No, that's great. Thank you.
And keep in mind, linear assessment is prepared by the province, the provincial assessor. So I really have no involvement on that other than just getting the final numbers. Now, this page looks really busy, page 29, or sorry, page 61. Really, all I want you to do is focus on the bottom right-hand corner, because all the assessment boils down to three classes that we can generate municipal revenue from. It's slightly different for education tax, but I'm speaking on municipal side right now. So there's the Farmland Assessment. It was 199 million. Well, farmland really changed nominal. It increased slightly, and that's just because there was some land that discovered had it was pasture, now it's being cultivated, so a little bit increase in the valuation because it's deemed arable now versus pasture. Residential, 22,520,000 overall. So even though we had some new, and therefore we're at a negative overall change in that. And our biggest impact to the composition of our assessment pie, if you will, is the non-residential. It's 91 million reduction overall. And as shown on the previous slide, 56 million of that was from linear alone. And then there's the dip assessment for the wells and pipelines, which, or sorry. Sorry, my mouse got a little excited here. We got back to the page here. So if we look at the, just for line 8, which is the DIP M&E, we lost about 24 million in assessment in that. And that would be mostly associated with the equipment that's at the wells or on the, potentially on the end of a pipeline, the separator, dehydrator, compressor, those sort of things. And we also lost another $6.5 million on line 106, which is the DIP non-residential. So that would be the buildings and structures, that silver building I was showing in the photo there. And there's been a bit of a sort of a policy change on that, any, in the past, when equipment was disconnected, we would zero off the assessment for the equipment, but we'd leave the building at 100% accessible. For the 2020 assessment year, province came out with a recommendation that the building itself suffers some loss in value because that equipment isn't really being used. It's just the building is in a storage state, if you will. And so we have to give some adjustment to the building as well. I was actually part of a committee about 2 years ago, that helped review this concept and made some recommendations on it. So if you have any further questions on that, you can definitely ask me offline, or if there's questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. So the biggest impact here is overall change. We lost $114 million in assessment. Our 2019 total taxable at year end was just over $4 billion. Now we're just at $3.9 billion. So on a simple correlation to property tax, if you held the mill rates, we're going to see a reduction in taxes. And the last chart here on page 5 is just showing you the composition of the pie for the last 5 years. And I might just... So the gray information is the linear. You can see it's kind of shrinking as a percentage of our assessment base. Back in 2016, it was about almost 34.5%. It's gone down to 32%. Partly due to equipment pipelines being and wells being shut in or disconnected. Even though we've had some new stuff over those years, but there's more of that offset happening. And then plus on the well side, there's been the shallow gas situation has received an adjustment. The kind of yellowish orange color there, that's the machinery equipment. So that would include the DIP machinery equipment and the non-DIP M&E. And it's dropped, roughly 0.7, 0.8% over the 5-year time frame. The blue is the non-residential. It's roughly decreased to 1%. So we've had some new buildings and new businesses set up, but market value has quashed that a bit. And plus, this non-res would also include those buildings where the equipment was disconnected. And so for 2020 assessment year, there's a further reduction given to those buildings. And then the pink shading there is the residential. And it's actually consistently been increasing as a percentage of the pie. Part of that, even though market value has dropped a bit, but there's been new assessment created, but because of the change in the other assessments, the overall percentage of the pie is just directly impacted. The residential is it's dropped a bit, but it's still more stable. It hasn't seen the same sort of impact that non-res and M&E has seen, so therefore it becomes a bigger percentage of the pie. So that concludes the presentation.
I've done it before. Thank you, Mr. Clem. Does anybody have any questions regarding the presentation?
No questions. Comment for me is every year I learn a little bit more and actually starting to see what you're talking about.
Only took us 4 years, but we understand assessment a little bit now.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, that's
Well, if it's any consolation, I learn something every year too, so.
Because it changes every year.
So you mentioned that one thing, there was a recommendation for that. Are we following that recommendation then for the province?
Yes.
The recommendation
To decrease the building values when...
Oh, yeah. We
just want a clarification
yeah.
for that. Thank you.
And one thing I guess forgot to mention that I'm still a delegate assessor for the PA, the provincial assessor, to prepare the hybrid assessment for the designated, or through a hybrid arrangement to prepare the designated industrial assessment. So they've been sort of dwindling each year, numerous municipalities, but because of the complexity, I think still be retained by the PA to provide assistance and prepare the assessment for Wheatland County.
I've got a question on the provincial scale. Where are they at with, because there was some talk a couple of years ago, last year, about changing the farmland, raising the assessment.
Well, you probably know better than me. We're kind of in the dark on that. I haven't really heard much discussion. There's been, I think, little tidbits of potentially considering adjusting that base rate of $350 an acre. Keep in mind that base rate $350 was developed in the early 80s, and that was sort of the average market. That discussion came up quite a bit. And not only that, there was also, I think, some pressure from urban municipalities, because pretty well most of their properties are at market value. They have maybe a little bit of farmland there, but the bulk of their assessments are at market value. Whereas, the rural base, because farmland does contribute to the education, what can be identified as a fairly low valuation from a market value concept. The urbans have expressed concerns in addition to the oil and gas industry, but I really don't know where that discussion has moved, or if it has moved any further.
Discussions that I've heard from the provincial level have not identified farmland as a priority to look at the assessment. I believe it's more of the linear electric rail that they've identified sort of for the next priority review. And I'm sure all of Council's aware, but the province has committed to leaving the assessment model review for the 3 years while we have the interim plan in place. And then they've committed to a better process when they do start looking at their earnings. So there has been swine feeding operations around like the commercial nature of ranching, grain crops, that type of thing. So it is a conversation at this point. I haven't heard GOA identify it as an area that they'll be looking at to analyze right now. So, but like Mr. Clem said, you can look at that with your mill rate. So,
if I may offer a comment on the confined feeding operation, as you probably aware of somewhat, to my knowledge, the only rural jurisdiction that chose to exercise a business tax is County of Lethbridge. And I know that they had some challenges, some legal challenges as to the validity of that, but my understanding is they were successful in upholding the validity of that business tax, and they're carrying forward with that on a go-forward basis. So it's it's an avenue out there if Council wanted to pursue some additional revenue. But I think probably an easier avenue is the taxation rate that's applied to farmland is, like the mill rate could be adjusted to recognize the, some increased revenue on that side. But that's a discussion, I think, for a later date, probably in April there.
Thank you.
So, Dennis, just a question on the Rocky Mountain. I forget the name of the
GTL.
Yeah. Rocky Mountain GT. Yeah. Is it running? Like, I've had questions. You can't really tell whether it's in production or.
Well, when I met with the manager there in, I think it was like September or early October, it wasn't operational at that point in time. Oh. The indication was that sometime this spring, summer, it was to start commissioning. I haven't touched base with them since, so I can't provide any further commentary on that.
What's that? Yeah, I have to. I had to too, but I just didn't want to bother him. I just thought that was with him. Essentially, are you seeing any exhaust out of the? Then it's probably. But I was curious because they use all their own recycling.
Capture a lot, yeah.
Well, I know but I thought there was going to be some emissions, a little bit yet, but maybe I'm wrong on that. So
there's nothing there.
I haven't had any.
Are they on our tax roll though?
No,
It would be.
well, a very small portion. There's the
Right.
land area, there's some fencing, and there's some buildings, like a couple of the stores. So in the scheme of what their total assessment will be for when it's operational, it's like, I don't know, maybe 5-10%, if that.
Okay.
Excellent. Any other questions regarding the assessment? Well, on behalf of council, thank you very much. We genuinely appreciate this and all of the work that you do. I know you are recognized provincially for exemplary assessment, and I have heard of other municipalities where the assessors are no longer doing that hybrid model with the province. So I know that the work that you do is recognized, and our council appreciates it because we know we can count on our assessment being done well and being accurate and fair, and it makes our jobs easier. So thank you.
Thank you, Reeve and Council.
A motion to accept the presentation as information.
Also move.
Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? 2.4.6, the Tax Penalty Bylaw.
Good afternoon, Reeve Link and Council. We're just waiting for our manager of finance to come on the line.
Perfect.
Reeve Link and Council, can you hear me?
Yes, good morning, welcome.
My apologies on that. So good morning again. My name is Matthew Cristiva, Manager of Financial Services. I'm here at 2.4.6. Item 2.4.6, Tax Penalty Bylaw, can be found on page 63 through 71 of your agenda. In 2020, the Tax Penalty Bylaw was changed to reflect that property taxes shall become due and payable on August 31st each year, as shown on the notice, instead of June 30th. This was done as a measure of taxpayer relief due to the economic impact of COVID-19 on ratepayers. Administration is recommending that the August 31st property tax due date be changed back to June 30th. Several municipalities were contacted, and all were planning to go back to the June deadline, except for one municipality. In regards to tips, administration also made changes that will allow residents to join the tax installment payment plan, more commonly known as the TIPS program, anytime during the year, up to May 1st, and had to pay the entire outstanding payment at that time to be on the program. This change provides improved customer service to residents and a predictable cash flow for the county. All other additions to this bylaw did not change the past bylaw, but rather enhanced, provided clarity, and improved readability of the bylaw. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Council's wishes.
I'll move the first reading.
Councillor Wilson has moved first reading. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried.
I'll move second reading.
Councillor Eichert has moved second reading. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Permission to hold third reading.
I'll move permission for third.
Councillor Armstrong has moved. Just a question to administration. If we need a unanimous vote, is it still okay if we vote by exception?
I don't think that's a problem. If there's any, yeah, it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried unanimously.
I'll move third and final.
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved third and final reading. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.47, interim budget amendments.
Yes, good morning, Council. Brian from Administration. I'm just going to present this RFD. So we did pass out some supplementary information to Council today. So there's a printed copy, and Councillor Kester, who's participating remotely, we did email this out to all of Council yesterday at 10:55 in the afternoon. So kind of very similar process to last year and all other previous years. So what we do is we just update our interim budget to a final. We just update anything that we possibly know of just to make sure the budget is as accurate as possible. So we did note to Council that we are making it a priority, and Council has definitely made this a priority to residents and ratepayers to keep the mill rates the same and not increase taxes at this time. With the assessment changes and the decreases, obviously it's unfortunate for administration, but however, we have made significant cuts and found efficiencies just to ensure that we can hold those mill rates. So that will equate to still a no tax increase on any ratepayers in any class. So one thing I would advise is that it wouldn't be wise to decrease those rates further at this time, just because we still are analyzing if there is any potential infrastructure deficit out there. We do have reserves, and those reserves are earmarked, and we should have even a more accurate earmark for those after our asset manager identifies those during her course of work. So for the operating, there really wasn't much of a change. The net change was about, I think, $40,000, which is very normal. Obviously, lots of things went down, then other things went up. It's all in kind of the supplementary information. Just to note as well, it does appear that we have a little bit of a room in the capital budget, but if Council does recall, the one thing that's not included in the budget that may be passed during 2021 would be the broadband project. So that's just something to kind of note as well. So typically the process would be, and the process should be following the MGA, which would be to approve the budget first and then the property tax bylaw after that. So what we're kind of doing is just kind of informing Council today of the amendments that are going to be included in the two. But later on, what we'll do is we'll schedule, we're going to be bringing back the operating and capital budget for final approval at the April 6th meeting, which is the next Council meeting. And then what we're going to do is just schedule a special Council meeting on April 13th just to pass the bylaw for the tax rates. If there's any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions regarding the changes to the budget? So all of these have already been approved through Council resolution, so it's just amending the actual budget documents prior to setting the tax rates. Anybody have any questions?
I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor Wilson has moved to approve. Any discussion? Is any councillor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.48, special council meeting scheduling.
Good morning, Reeve Lincoln Council. Tracy from Corporate and Financial Services. As the CAO reviewed the dates for the interim budget, final budget, and special meeting, we're requesting a special meeting to approve the property tax bylaw. This is due to, we probably will not receive the DIP requisition until March 31st. Any questions?
This would just be a special council meeting prior to our MPC that morning. If no questions, a motion to approve holding a special council meeting.
Also move.
Councillor Eichert has moved. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.49, information technology policies.
Good morning, Reeve and Council. I'm Corey Adamson, Manager of IT Services.
Good morning.
Today I have before you an RFD on page 78 of the Council package, seeking your approval to overhaul the existing IT policies by essentially rescinding the old ones, including a couple of IT-related policies within the HR policies and adopt a fresh new comprehensive policy. These new policies are found on page 95 of the Council package. I guess I get the privilege of taking up the most space today on the Council package. We wanted to make this process collaborative, and so the policies have been reviewed by many staff members who provided a lot of great feedback for us. That feedback was considered in the adjustments towards the final drafts. And I just wanted to take this time to thank them all for that as well. There's a lot of effort that went into this. These policies should always have a notion of continuous improvement, and these ones hit on the key topics that are important for a county such as ours. They're more detailed. They provide staff, council, and even contractors who have access to our information a better understanding of our commitments and expectations regarding, like, not just technology, but the fundamental underlying thing that we're attempting to protect, and that's our information and to maintain business continuity. So this is why the overall proposed policy heading on here is Information Security and Technology Policy. This, in essence, helps us to move into the future of and progression of information services and gives us a more firm foundation on which to move forward. There's quite a bit to digest in these policies, and so ways to review these policies on an annual basis. The recommended motion is is backed up on page 78 on the Council package, and I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Adamson? I just have one question on page 96. Under the definitions, I noticed the old policies specifically addressed employees, and then they kind of different to specifically include council, or is it commonly accepted that we would be an employee, or what's the?
Yeah, that was the, I guess, the assumption made here. In certain cases, I did mention council specifically, but yeah, that's we could definitely make sure that that's added. So good.
I wouldn't mind if council's okay with it, just adding elected officials specifically, just so that if we have new councillors or then it's very clear that all of these policies apply to us as well. Any other questions regarding the policies?
You need two motions for this, or can you just do it as read? Because you're rescinding one and approving another?
Yeah, I think you can just approve and rescind in the same one.
I'll move that Council approve Information Security and Technology Policy Section 4.1 to 4.3 and rescind the following current policies as provided in the package.
Councillor Bigger has moved. Any questions or discussion?
This is Margaret. Is that as amended for page 96?
Oh, right. As amended. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. On behalf of council, thank you. This is incredibly impressive what you've done, and I think the caliber of the policies, and not just the policies, but the caliber of this, like the work in this department, is very impressive and reassuring, I think, for us as council. Jason's laughing. It's reassuring for me because of the focus on security and just the responsible management of information. So I genuinely appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the feedback. Have a nice day, guys.
You too. Take care. We do have an 11 o'clock appointment. All right. Good point. We will move to 2.410, another application regarding the Universal Broadband Fund, I believe. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Reeve Lincoln Counsel. Tracy from Corporate and Financial Services. As you're aware, on the February 16th regular meeting of Council made a motion just to provide support to any service provider who applies to the Universal Broadband Fund. And so on March 4th, administration did receive an email from Viasat Canada, and we did send a letter of support, and we're just asking Council to ratify, thank you, that decision.
Perfect. Council's wishes.
I'll ratify the letter that was sent to Viasat Canada.
Councillor Kester has moved. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Now we'll move to our 11 o'clock appointment. Under 2.2, CPR regarding the Carsland whistle cessation.
Great, thanks, Council. Mike Zier with Transportation and Ag Department here. So on the phone, I have Pete Bayerly and Gary Rosen with CP Rail, and they're here to answer any questions the Council may have on whistle cessation, whistle removal, basically. So just some background, some context to this request and why this appointment's before you today.
Sorry, I apologize to interrupt General Manager Zier. We're just having a technology issue.
Yeah, no.
Sorry.
No problem.
I think we lost our call, so.
Hey.
Councillor Kester, are you able to hear us?
Just one minute, sorry.
Yes, I can hear you.
No, that's okay. And Pete and Gary, are you still there?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
Okay. And your recording's working okay, Mackenzie? Okay. We proceed? Okay, wonderful. Sorry, GM Zero, I apologize.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for that. So as I was saying, basically the reason behind the appointment today is about a little while ago here, we had a request for whistle removal in the Hamlet of Carsland through the train, CP train that goes through there. I contacted CP and Transport Canada, and as of yesterday, actually, we sent out this information package for Council at 4:10, if everyone wants to take a look at the documents that were sent out. There's two documents. One is an excerpt from Transport Canada website, basically showing the process that they require for this sort of whistle removal request. So basically what we did was contact the rail company primarily right off the bat and consulted with them if they had any concerns. We discussed it a bit and then decided that the best route forward would be to undergo a safety study in that area just to kind of confirm what our feelings were. So you can see on that second attachment, and it's up on the screen here as well for everyone in the room, we underwent a whistle cessation review, basically, is what it was called. So we had a contractor come in, do a assessment of the sight lines for that road, speed limits on the county road, and assess the number of trains and that sort of thing crossing here. And they do have some recommendations here as far as improvements they would see on the consultant's end as far as recommendations for having that whistle removed. So this was forwarded on to CP, and basically, I think from here, I'll just let CP respond back on what their comments were on this report. So Pete and Gary, if you're on the line.
And if we can just have you introduce yourself just for our record, please.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Pete Bayerly here. I am the Senior Manager for Public Works for Western Canada. And my colleague, Gary, did you want to introduce yourself quickly? Sure. Gary Rosen, I'm a Senior Project Manager, Crossing Design for Canadian Pacific.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having us. And again, thanks for hearing us out on this one. Again, following, the basic guidelines for whistle cessation, when you look at this crossing, it does, on the surface, meet all the requirements for whistle cessation. It's fully protected. It has flashing lights, bells, and gates. And those are put there to protect for sight lines and to make sure traffic doesn't go when a train is on the track. But the concern we had here was primarily related to southbound traffic traveling along Range Road 260 up to the crossing. As you know, we have a backtracker siding just off to the west, and our concern is that we could have a train parked there that would obscure the view to the west of an eastbound train approaching on our main line. And we have 22 trains a day running on that track, running at a speed of 50 miles per hour. And the concern is that the gates and lights may be flashing as a warning for that mainline train that is coming along at 50 miles an hour, but that a motorist or pedestrian even confuses the track that's parked on the back track as the reason for the crossing being down and is there waiting, because we start whistling about a quarter mile away. And Gary can talk to when at what time the actual gates start to be activated. But the concern for us is that somebody mistakes the park down, decides to proceed through around the gate anyway, and then gets hit by the train coming at 50 miles per hour that was obstructed by the train in the backtrack. Gary, did you want to expand a little bit on how the crossing actually works and, when the lights and the gates start to be activated?
Sure. So we use constant warning time equipment at this location, and basically what that means is they can predict the speed of the train and give you a more accurate warning time at the crossing. So the equipment will detect the train approaching, and then once it makes a determination of speed, what we're looking for is approximately 30 seconds of warning time at the crossing. We have a gate delay of 8 seconds at this crossing. So the lights will start flashing, but the gates won't lower immediately. There'll be an 8-second gate delay, and then they'll start to lower, and the gates will be in the horizontal position 5 seconds before the train gets to the crossing. Tying into what Pete said, the main concern there is that because those gates are being lowered, that somebody might see a parked train and think that that's the reason the crossing is activated, and they may try and go and thereby get on the track just when the train that's coming down the main line is doing at 50 miles an hour is approaching, and there won't be enough time to clear the crossing, and they'll get hit by the train.
Thank you. So I see there is a recommendation to mitigate that by considering lowering the speed limit on Barstow Road between Railway Avenue and the crossing. I guess I'd look to the area councillor as well, because I know you have fielded a number of concerns about the whistle. I don't know what your thoughts are on the remedial measure.
Well, if you go back to, Mike, the intersection, back further where you can see there's a stop sign at Barstow. So if they're going southbound, they either have to turn the corner. There's another better picture, Mike.
Aerial picture?
Aerial, yeah. Okay. That they either have to turn, stop sign. So yeah. So I don't think speed going southbound is an issue. And so I've been kind of watching, because this came in a year ago, this request. And the trains that are parked on the side rail or the spur, they're far back. Like you can't even really see that they're parked. Like they're back past the actual downtown of Carsland. And that's what I've been noticing with every time that I've seen a train off to the side. They're quite a bit further west. And nobody would actually ever, it doesn't, by driving, you're not going to see that there's a vehicle or a train parked there. So you're actually paying attention to the lights. Am I, although we would,
I think
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry, it's Pete here. And I understand what you're saying. And again, we have some control signals there that they'll park back from. I guess the concern is that our trains are getting longer all the time. So it's true that they're parked a little further back right now, but that may not always be the case. So just something to consider, right? This was our concern. And we asked Mike and Counsel to consider that before enacting whistle cessation.
And we are planning with to go to the residents, a public engagement, so that we can get everybody's input on this too, not just our thoughts.
No, absolutely, that's understood. We just wanted to make clear what our concerns were here.
Yeah.
And we, like I said, we appreciate Mike has been really good to work with. He's taken that serious, and again, we appreciate the time.
And as you can understand, what's coming forth is the businesses that are along there. It's really hard to conduct business because there is a lot of trains going through, and the whistle just pretty much stops whatever transaction or conversation or. I mean, I lived right on the Railway Avenue for growing up. You get used to it, but as a business owner, it's pretty. I can see they're wanting to do this.
No, understood. And I have to be honest, with the COVID and the lockdown and more people home, we're seeing more and more of these types of requests. It is just, for us, it's one more tool in what we consider our safety kit. I will say, it's likely part of the report. I can't remember it right now, but this isn't a decision that CP makes on their own. This is actually part of our Canadian Rail operating rules. It's considered our Rule 14. That unfortunately does specify that our trains need to blow 2 long, 1 short, and 1 long whistle, starting a quarter mile away from these crossings. So I can understand where it ends up being intrusive for sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate your concern. We're concerned about the residents too, so going forward, we'll make sure that everybody's involved. The engagement is that your concerns are taken to the public engagement.
Thank you for that.
Just a question. Over the years, I've observed that in the bigger urban centers like Calgary, Edmonton, those Red Deer, when the trains are going through, you're right, the longs and the short whistle blasts, but it's relevant to what's long and short. And I've noticed that in the rural areas, when they blow a long whistle, it's a long whistle. In the bigger urban areas, they're not quite as long. They've backed off on how long their blasts are.
I'll be honest with you, I don't know that that's something they can do. It was something that I would have to follow up on. It's not something I'm aware of as a matter of policy or something that we do in different areas. My understanding is that the whistle should be consistent no matter where we're operating, as long as whistle is required at the crossing. I'm certainly happy to follow up, though.
Thank you.
So in terms of process at this point, I'm hearing perhaps the municipality, we would like to do some engagement with the local residents first, and then perhaps we could schedule a follow-up with CP to discuss doing this, like request to Transport Canada. Is that the process? So engagement first.
Yeah, I believe so.
And
maybe
circle back
through the chair, Pete and Gary, you've done enough of these. Is that the process you see going forward?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately the next is, as you say, it's that public consultation. And then if the council and the public decide this is in their best interest to remove the whistle cessation or to enact whistle cessation, it's really as simple as getting I can't think of the word right now, essentially an order from council saying that that's what you'd like to do. We then take that forward, we issue a bulletin, we'll put whistle cessation signs up where we normally have our whistle posts, and issue a bulletin to our train crews to enact the whistle cessation.
So just one clarifying question. That's great for the perk. I noticed that there's different kind of methods to proceed if the railway company and the municipality are in agreement. In order for CP Rail to agree, would council be required to lower that speed limit, or is this something you would, how mandatory would that be for you to agree to this?
Good question.
To be honest, I don't recall requesting the decrease in speed. And again, we ultimately will leave that decision to you. We wanted to bring our concerns forward. If as I say, the council and public, we do have this crossing fully protected with the gates, lights. You would like to think that people won't go around the gates, but this was the concern we had. And we're really happy that everybody's been willing to hear us out on it. But if the preference from council and the residents are to proceed with whistle cessation, then we'll certainly work with you to enact that.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions? Perhaps a motion to accept the report, the information from Transport Canada on the application process. For information, sorry.
Yes, I'd like to thank you guys for giving us your thoughts, and I will move this forward as information.
Councillor Bigger has moved to accept as information. Any final questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
No, thanks very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Have a great afternoon.
You as well. Thanks again.
District Historical Society.
Reeve Lincoln Council, Tracy from Corporate and Financial Services. On page 139 of your agenda, there's a request to transfer $6,041 from the county to the Western District Historical Society. As you are aware, our auditors have recommended that administration close trust accounts that are inactive. This account has not been used since 2016 and was informed that the society has obtained its charitable status as of October 2020 and no longer needs to submit payments through the county. This is also in line with the county's new policy regarding not-for-profits obtaining their charitable status. Administration is recommending that the remaining balance of this account be transferred to the Western District Historical Society and that this account be closed.
Any questions from council? Council's wishes.
So moved.
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved to approve that the funds be transferred and that the trust account be closed, and that the society administer these funds going forward. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.413, Fire Guardian appointments.
Good morning, Council. Matt from Administration. On page 149 of the agenda package is the annual appointment of Fire Guardians resolution. Bring it forward to Council annually. So you have the list of appointed guardians recommended, including staff from the county. Thank you.
Excellent, thanks. Council's wishes.
I move that we accept the recommendation of the fire guardians.
Councillor Kester
thank them
moves
for
to
their time.
appoint the fire guardians as listed in the RFD. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Move to 2.414, investment attraction overview.
Thank you, Madam Reeve. And to Council, on page 152 of your agenda package is the request for decision report with regards to the investment attraction action plan and strategy. That is a pillar component of the economic development plan that the county approved several years ago. So just by way of background, the investment attraction program ensures that we have developed a thorough analysis, strategies, tools, and the tools required to attract suitable, desired, and complementary investment into the county. We don't have this yet, and this is our basic foundational strat plan moving forward on how to accomplish those tasks. Linking it to the strategic plan that was recently approved for 2021 moving forward, this plan accomplishes the 4 key priorities, and it fits into those 4 key priorities that create a strong investment attraction realm and environment and program. So strong economy, sustainable organization, long-term plans, and collaborative relationships with neighbors. So just wanting to bring Council back a little bit in the economic development strategy that was approved a few years ago and that we're working with. The audit that we conducted with putting this plan together, this action plan together, was we looked at the 6 components that really fit into an investment attraction strategy, and noteworthy, we have accomplished quite a few of them already. So the web presence, as Council's aware, we have successfully completed this and continue to enhance its presence, including developing our own kind of business attraction, economic development website, including portal tools that are useful for investors. We've created that economic and community profile that is the pillar document for someone looking to invest in and find out specific key information and source to make that important decision to invest and move to the county. Industrial and commercial land and built inventories. This is part of our online land inventory. However, this is a main pillar and component in the action plan that we've noted that can improve and that we need to improve on as a county in order to really flesh out and bring in some of those investors that are looking. And we can really kind of elaborate on some of that vacant land that we have. We are developing a realtor portal currently as a main primary tool to accomplish this objective. So that's an ongoing project that we're working and collaborating with IT services on. Investment marketing tools, economic development and investment readiness tools to further develop. So those investment marketing tools are really they kind of latch on to that web presence that we're working on improving constantly. Adequacy and readiness of employment lands, number 5, fully served, and an inventory will be developed in consultation with statutory planning documents. That's a main component of this strategy as well, and how investment inquiries and requests are handled. So as Council's aware, we have developed Team Wheatland, and we're further a really good internal team here that's able to kind of expedite information to those inquiries that we're starting to see increase in terms of investment, inquiries and where to develop, how to develop, and what our plans are all about. So the action plan further emphasizes the development of several tools to improve investment readiness position, including the development of an investment readiness checklist. This is a best practice that a lot of municipalities have already developed or are in the process of developing. So we need to get that checklist moving forward. And a best practice self-assessment tool. So we want to refine our investment attraction processing. So basically looking at our statutory planning documents or those that we're refining right now, looking at clustering, targeting, networking, implementing, and monitoring. So clustering. So looking at industries. Industries like to cluster. We already have some organic clustering going on in the county, so basically capitalizing on that. Targeting. So targeting the investment that we would really like to see. We have statutory area structure plans that are set up for industrial development. So really doing that target approach, reaching out, networking as well, and implementing any tools that are necessary that we see as best practices that could further kind of streamline and capitalize on some of those networking connections that we're already developing, and monitoring the tracking that we have in terms of where people are looking, where the calls are coming in, the industries that they're in, and where they want to develop within the county as well. Another important note that I want to put forward to council is that in consultation with finance, other best practices, other economic development departments in various municipalities across the province and in fact the country, we are going to look at some municipal incentives in terms of taxation and some bylaws that we can roll out in terms of phasing and all of that. So we're looking at sliding taxation scales right now, in fact, with thresholds in order to incentivize development. You may hear, and I just want to put this forward, you may hear that there are a lot of municipalities that are not in favor of this because they don't see the results. Just putting it up to council, when bylaws such as these taxation incentive bylaws are implemented, it takes a little while to generate some interest. It takes a little while to educate a broader environment, a broader region. So these are some tools that we'll bring forward for council consideration. So this is a main component of the plan as well. You'll note in the plan there is a lot of history, a lot of statistics that we've put forward, and we do have some key target dates that we're looking at in terms of how we can kind of look at our KPIs and see where we're at with this investment readiness program. So we're looking at developing the investment readiness checklist right off the bat, Q2 2021, bringing that forward. Identifying competitive advantages, so SWOT analysis, competitive advantage analysis is Q3 of 2021. Target industry analysis, so developing that target industry kind of report that we can go off of, Q4 2021. Identify and analyze targets, so identify those industries, businesses, a short list of investment attraction opportunities. We're looking at Q1 2022. Identify current and future investment ready sites, inventory on our WC website, so developing that, further refining that land inventory and all the details associated with sites. We're looking at doing that, of course, in Q1 of 2022. Identify objectives for investment attraction, so target sectors, timelines, amounts. The information is within the plan, but Q4 of 2021, finalizing that. Determining and developing strategies and tactics, so we have the brochures, the supplementary materials, all of that information. So various completed rollout dates with that component in particular. An evaluation metric, we're looking at Q4 of 2021, and that metric is to evaluate the success of the investment attraction process. So we always want to be constantly evaluating and bringing back any information to council as requested. So this is a very comprehensive plan, but it is a pillar of our investment attraction kind of process. It fits within the strategic plan as approved by council, and it checks off a lot of those boxes that we're looking to do within the ECDEV strategy and the strategic plan. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions from council?
Did we get permission from the city of Calgary to do this?
This was
well, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I'm excited. I think this really just takes us in the direction that we've been talking about, and the priorities that we've identified. So I think it's exciting.
Yeah, I'm very excited too.
I think we need to make the coffee stronger. I think everybody is excited.
Well, the words should actually pitch deck. What is that? And then flat sheets.
You can't
find out where that
use
is.
a pitch deck, can you?
Well, you tried to make it interesting. You did.
No, it honestly, it is so exciting. And I think especially having this following our assessment report, I think that just really highlights how critical this is in terms of sustainability for the county, because we need to diversify. We need to attract diverse investment into the county for us to be sustainable and keep mill rates, not increase mill rates and things like that. So
will we be getting an update on what businesses are sort of coming into here, so that, I mean, I love this. Should have been done a long time ago. And I know everything takes time, and it takes time to get the ball rolling. And I really love where we're going. It just, I'd love to hear, some babies, just get me excited more so than the coffee.
Yeah, that's a great point. And even quarterly reports on the readiness stuff. And then, any leads I think are good. And I know our economic development board and the subcommittees from that are going to be actively engaged in this. And I'm sure council will be able to engage and help as well. So.
Yeah, and to that point, exactly, through just to council, part of the vision of this program and one of the tasks as soon as we brought on Jamie as the investment attraction specialist was to in fact create this. So do a whole audit of our current inventory, our files, literally, and see how we can best kind of fix it up, organize things. So we do have now a database of inquiries that we're keeping, following up on, literally implementing the follow-up timelines and how much headway we're giving and what the information is that we need to provide. So prior to Jamie coming on board, we looked at the tool of developing a team wheatland, getting all the brain power in the room that we need once an inquiry comes in to kind of get the information out as soon as possible. That was one of the key things, but along that, Jamie noted, there were some things that we can improve for those processes. So we really fleshed that out. And part of the vision of bringing back information on terms of our KPIs, how this plan is performing, is one of them. But also, in our reports, what I would like to do as part of this developing and further refining the tools, the visuals and that, we do have our community development services report where we talk about, the stats of what, the valuation of the safety codes permits to, maybe put another graphic in there showing, what are the industries in terms of the industry clusters or, what's being developed. So we can track the industries that are, that are developing in the county. And see where we're at in that regard too. So that's part of the process and part of the vision of rolling this out and being more transparent with the information so that you guys have it monthly.
Matt, is Jamie on the line?
I don't believe so.
I just know not all of council.
I actually am on the line here. Yep.
There he is.
I don't think all of council has met you. Donna and I have, just because we're on the economic development board. But if you could introduce yourself to council and kind of give a background on what kind of expertise you're bringing to the table, that'd be great.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. Good morning. My name is Jamie Cremble. I came from the province of Alberta. I worked for agriculture forestry, where I did investment attraction for about a year and a half. Prior to that, I also worked overseas in China. I was working for the Canadian Embassy in Agri-Food Canada for about 2 years there, and then I worked for private industry, working on CETA Inc. applications. In Alberta, I've also worked for Municipal Affairs, the Emergency Management Group, and also worked in private industry, agri-food, and then also with oil and gas. So I have quite a bit of experience working for government as well as overseas. And then the investment attraction stuff from the Alberta Agriculture and Forestry section, as well as some work I did overseas in China.
That's excellent, Jamie. Thanks for sharing that. And I think your diverse background will be extremely valuable to
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here.
Focus. Well, welcome. We're excited.
So do all the ASPs have levies? Oh, it's because I don't think I don't think we decided. I don't know where we left it.
Yeah, so good question. And part of in terms of looking at those ASPs is reevaluating those levies in consultation with Public Works and the reviews that they're undertaking as well. So it's hard a lot of the approved ASPs have levy values and rates and percentages and all of those technical kind of nuances there. But we're looking at how to best attract development right now. So in review of those ASPs, we'll have hopefully some modifications that better incentivize, but it's hard to say right now in terms of going through that fulsome review. So we're taking
well, if there was some interest in the goldfinch right now, there would be no levy attached. So what happens? They go in without a levy, or how does that work? What would be the procedure if we don't have levies on it?
Well, in terms of, I'll bring up the Goldfinch ASP, but I need to look at the definitive kind of percentage of that. But there is, part of the development process, there is a trigger in terms of monies owed for those levies, yeah.
Yeah, you could let me know.
I can let you know all that information for sure.
I have a question, or say we have a successful applicant comes into the county and develops their new dream. Part of going forward, would it be proper, or would there be a questionnaire for these successful additions to the county on evaluating why they come to the county? Was it in fact because of our incentives? What did they do to garner their attention? And ultimately, there's going to be a contingent out there that think we're not being frugal enough, and there'll be some saying this would be a way to address some of those concerns.
Great question, Councillor Kester. I'll knowing that Jamie's on the line, I'd like him to kind of supplement, but we do have component 5, the process of investment attraction, implement, monitor, evaluate, and adjust. So that's a really great suggestion. And in terms of monitoring and evaluating, we can totally engage investor organization that's looking to invest in the county and gather and generate some and evaluating. Jamie, if you have any supplementary comments.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you just mentioned, part of the investment attraction process is the aftercare as well. So working with investors, find out, business issues around business retention and expansion, doing surveys, talking to businesses, which is something I plan to do, is to do outreach to our current investors to find out what kind of challenges or issues they have that might be preventing expansion of the business. So absolutely, the feedback loop is super important. I mean, expansion can come from within as well as from without. So absolutely being in regular contact and talking to the businesses is important. If I understand the question correctly, yeah, it kind of would fall into the category of aftercare. I think that might cover it.
Along the lines of incentives, as administration, because I see some of this incentives have to be tax-base related. And is administration going to bring this forward that we can have a discussion on this? Because I've got several ideas that I believe will help, but some discussion on this, and I just don't know when that's going to happen. I'm coming back, buddy.
No, it's a great question. It is referenced in the RFD. I'm just trying to find where. Yeah, on page 153, the top paragraph just under bullet 6 speaks to strategy outlines the county's commitment to incentives, municipal tax incentives, sliding taxation scales with a threshold. So all of that will be part of this action plan, and I believe we'll be having that conversation prior to the tax bylaw in April, so in the next 2 weeks. 3 weeks.
And that's correct. Just to supplement Reevling's comments, we will, and any best practices generated that will further progress the county in terms of assisting with this plan and the overall strategic plan, we certainly will bring that forward in terms of a report to council, be it a committee of the whole for discussion or something like that. That is part of the process. So council will be fully engaged in any of those items.
Yeah, just Brian from administration as well. Just to note, any kind of tax relief to any sort of property would have to be done, I believe, by bylaw, especially because we would have our tax rate bylaw. So anything that would stray from that bylaw would also need to be approved by council. There's a section in the MJ that states it. I just don't have it off the top of my head, that council can reduce, waive, cancel penalties, kind of that kind of thing. So it does have to come back to council, like legislatively required. Thanks.
Excellent. Any other questions regarding the investment attraction plan, strategy and action plan? We are looking for a motion to accept the plan as information.
Also move.
Councillor Bigger has moved. Any final questions or discussion? Motion is carried. No, sorry. Is any councillor opposed? Now the motion is carried. Move to 2.415, offer to purchase Crowfoot lots.
Yes, hello, Bryce here, Manager of Technical Services. Can everybody hear me?
You bet. Good morning, Bryce.
Good morning. Today I'm bringing forward, staff has received an offer to purchase roll 1585100 and 1585110 for a total of $3,160 from an owner of multiple properties in the Crowfoot area there. The purchaser has advised that they have no intention of developing them or building on them, as they already have approval to construct a residence on a currently owned property in that area. The lots would be sold for the market assessed value and with all costs and fees of the transaction to the purchaser. Administration is recommending to accept the submitted offer to purchase the rolls for the cost for the amount stated, and that all associated costs with the transfer and acceptance, and that this is acceptance for 90 days. I'm available for any questions.
Any questions regarding the offer?
I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor Wilson has moved. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to correspondence. First piece of correspondence is a letter from the Minister of Municipal Affairs regarding the request for an extension for the CMRB growth and servicing plans and REF. The Minister did grant the extension to June 1st. I was encouraged to see the second paragraph in that letter where Minister McIver wrote to colleagues that the growth and servicing plans are in place to maintain an environment that encourages economic development, investor certainty, and job creation in the region. So I was very grateful that that is a focus of Minister McIver. I know that was some of what we talked with him about when we met with him regarding some of our concerns with the CMRB. So I'm grateful that the ministry gave that direction to the CMRB, and we will see what the board does with that information. The order is attached granting the extension. We received correspondence that he had received our letter regarding COVID restrictions, and their economy and innovation included in the package as well. He did thank us for taking the time to share our thoughts. He also did outline some business supports that are available, and I'm sure that our community and development planning team is aware of that. I'm hoping that we might be able to amplify that, what is it called? Enhanced COVID-19 business benefit to some of our businesses in the county. Because I know there have been some challenges, not some, there's been substantial challenges there. So just to make sure that people are aware of that program. I know it's dynamic and there's often new programs or changing criteria. So it's always good for just to be amplifying that when we can, I think, to help our business owners. And then there is a letter from DBS Environmental that was forwarded by Councillor Armstrong regarding the subsidization of household hazardous waste. And I understand that this may have a substantial impact on us for some of our agricultural.
Yeah, Mike, I'll just read you what Tammy has sent out to the directors and administrators. This household hazardous waste program will no longer be funded by the province. Effective May 31st, Swan Hills will no longer be accepting household hazardous waste from municipalities unless they are prepared to pay the disposal fees. The association will be handled. Please discuss with your respective councils if they are prepared to continue the program and pay the additional disposal fees. For Drumheller landfill, the additional costs could be between $56,000 to $96,000 a year, depending on product coming in. Now, if we charge that over the scale to the customer, just as an example, a 5-gallon pail of I can't remember what she called it, but it's a hazardous waste, would cost $100 to the producer that's bringing it across the scale. And it'll go back in the back of his truck and it'll go home and it'll go into a coolie or it'll go into a bag and end up in our landfill somewhere. So that's our concern, that a lot of this stuff will end up. There's a lag. Like I said, be careful what you ask for, but that EPR program, their minister is going out and doing a review of that. He's going out. Hopefully he's got something in place by this fall's legislation. I don't see it happening that fast. Something along this for this household waste, this hazardous household waste, could be rolled into that same program somehow, but there's going to be at least a 1 to 2 year lag before any of that happens. So I just did some calculations, and there's roughly 30,000 residents in the Drumheller district landfill. So if you take the high end at 96,000, I'll send that out to everybody. You can go through that and send it in if you want. That's got to be in by April 30th. So I'll send that out to everybody later today. So, but that's where it's at. Swan Hills. The worst of that is Swan Hills has been making money. They have not been losing money. They've been making huge. And the government has taken all that funding from that Swan Hills plant and put it into general revenues, not into a reserve. They're looking at a $10 million overhaul to bring that plant up to scale. Well, they make more than that in a year on that plant. But they haven't been putting it in reserves, so they're saying they don't have the money for it. They've been going. So we're a little frustrated that that's what's happened with it. But anyways, that's where it's at.
Oh, just turn your microphone on.
Down the road, like government works in mysterious ways. That household hazardous waste material, would you be able to get rid of that at an energy to waste facility? Mm-hmm. The plastic, I think we should be lobbying the government, because from what I heard, I forget which minister said, they were not looking at any energy to waste. They were going to put this fancy project in, which is going to cost a lot of money, going to cost every product that's manufactured in Alberta more money, to somehow save the environment, because we want to recycle this stuff, as opposed to recycling it and turning it into energy.
I guess just before you go further to explain, when I say yes, it can be dealt with there. That isn't what they were looking at, but they could go through the ministry, the province, and as long as they put the extra scrubbers, all that stuff that has to be done to handle hazardous waste, it can be done. There's a cost to that. Right. At the initial.
All I'm saying is we sort of have a one-stop solution, or we could have a one-stop solution for it if the government were to look at it. Because none of these programs that the government's looking at implementing are going to be zero cost, right? Like all this stuff is going to cost the taxpayer money. So I'm just trying to figure out if there's some way we can lobby harder to do this, right? It still doesn't solve this problem, because it's still going to take 5 years to get this thing, with everything going on, it still take 5 years to get this thing on board. But
and I think Swan Hills is going to do the upgrade. They're just not getting subsidized by the government anymore, so they're just downloading that back onto the municipalities. But I think they'll still go through with it. So I think that facility will still be there. It's just it's going to come out of the.
Well, and one of the premises of the energy from waste too was that anything could be recycled would be would not be included in the waste stream. So if there is recycling opportunities, I think all of that was optimally separated out prior to.
And I fully understand that, but we know that there's so little like there's so much waste generated and there's so much recyclable waste. There's only so much you can do with, like, as we're finding out with out at Crowfoot Colony, there's only certain things that we can do with, use certain types of plastics, right? So it's, I mean, this becomes a logistical nightmare whereupon if you can burn it all, other than the quote unquote green optics of it, it's a very, very good solution to the problem. And we need some leadership from the federal government or from the provincial government to stand up there and say, yeah, it's as green to burn a piece of plastic and turn it back into energy as it is to take that piece of plastic and recycle it into another piece of plastic.
Eventually it does become waste.
Yeah.
No matter what you build it into, it eventually becomes waste. The biggest, that goes to what you're talking about with Sewa, the biggest frustration to us, and we'll be going over that this Friday, one of the biggest frustrations to us is the government's always telling us that they're fully on board, they're fully on board, they're fully on board, they're fully on board, but they're not doing anything about it. They just aren't doing anything, and we view this as a...
Show me the money.
I'm fed up to here with it.
So just a question, back to the EPR and the impact on the hazardous waste. Question to you, because you know this best. Would it be helpful if, I think we'll do the EPR consultation individually. Do you think it would be helpful to address something like this in a letter to the minister directly, just requesting them to specifically consider EPR around, I'm particularly thinking what's relevant to Wheatland is around the agricultural containers, because I don't want to see exactly what you're saying happen, either costs being put onto our egg producers or onto our taxpayers in general, if we could make sure that's integrated into that EPR programming.
Yeah, I do. That's part of, when I talk to Tammy again, that's going to be part of the discussion, and I think the letter, because Tammy has all the information, she can put some numbers into it. If we can get Drumheller Solid Waste to put a letter together, and then we support the letter, or we'll send it out to the municipalities and just get support from them and send it in.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
That would be even more powerful, because then you're leveraging 15 municipalities. Okay, that'd be a good strategy. So you'll bring that back then, once you guys have had a chance to look at it. Awesome. So is there any action that you need at this point from this letter, or you'll just bring information?
No, this is just for tell you that the board's going to be making a decision, because they are not going to accept any waste after that date. So somebody's got to pay for it, and so there may be an additional bill coming up here for, I don't know how we're going to look at it, but somehow it's got to be paid, or we throw it in the landfill.
Personally, I think my preference at this point would be, personally, to look at this from a municipal perspective as an interim measure until the EPR engagement is done.
Yeah. That's what I'm hoping, because I know if we go to the municipalities and the municipalities send it out to their ratepayers and tell them that we're no longer accepting it without full compensation for the cost, and let them know what the cost is, we'll be burying it in plastic bags in our landfill or digging it out of the ditches somewhere.
Just a clarification for me, so hazardous waste, is this a roundup thing or is this an ongoing collection?
It's ongoing.
Yeah,
It's your roundups. Your roundups.
Just wanted to make sure for clarification.
Tammy has got a hold of the ones that do the spring roundups, and she's pushing them to get it done before, so that we can at least get that out of the way without the extra cost. But after it's ongoing all along with it.
I vaguely remember years ago the toxic roundups, they stopped. The funding was pulled on that at one time for the urbans. I remember that years ago, and then the lobbying started, and then of course the product builds up, and they needed to do it. So I mean, it is. I mean, you talk good for the environment. This is good for the environment. This is obviously money well spent, because you get rid of this stuff instead of being dumped in the ditch, and that's exactly what will happen.
Yeah, like I said, my frustration is how the government used the funding that Swan Hills collected, and now they're telling us, well, it's costing us money to operate that, and it's not.
Okay. Yeah, maybe just a motion to accept all the correspondence as information. You're making that? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Armstrong has moved. Any discussion or any other questions? Any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Why don't we...
Break for lunch for now.
We did. Yeah. I believe we have a motion approving his attendance at the conference. Under 2.32. Okay, we will break for lunch. We will reconvene at 1 o'clock and move into our closed session agenda items.
The organizer has ended this Uber conference. Goodbye.